So, Uta, thank you very much for inviting me to this talk about our painting, The Girl with a Pearl Necklace, which is wonderfully embedded in its contemporary context in the Dresden exhibition and invites here for an inspiring exchange with Vermeer's other works. Although there are numerous outstanding Dutch works in Berlin due to Prussian-Iranian relations, none of the Vermeer painting in Berlin originally came from the Prussian kings, in contrast to the Dresden collection. The Gemäldegalerie received its first Vermeer painting in 1874 when the collection of the Aachen industrialist Barthold Symond was bought for the Berlin Museum. Barthold Symond was a German industrialist, banker, and art collector who in 1854 started collecting paintings and drawings guided by Gustav Friedrich Wagen, the director of the Gemäldegalerie in Berlin, after having met the great connoisseur Theophil Thore-Bürger in 1859, Symond would rise to become the leading art collector on the European continent. In the 1860s and early 1870s, Symond would bring together a superb group of Dutch and Flemish paintings, including highlights by Rembrandt, Vermeer, Van Gogh, and especially Frans Hals. After the stock market crash of 1873, he was forced to sell a large, prominent part of his collection. No less than 218 paintings and more than 400 works on paper landed that way in Berlin, a major coup for which especially Willem Bode was responsible. In Thore-Bürger, Barthold Symond had an excellent advisor and contact person. Symond, who traveled a lot for work anyway and reportedly spent every third night on the train, went on discovery tours together with Thore-Bürger, among other things hunting down paintings by Notre Cher Delftois, our beloved Delft. At first, Symond acquired several landscape paintings at the time attributed to Vermeer before deciding to add a figure piece to his collection after all. He chose The Girl with a Pearl Necklace from the estate of Thore-Bürger, as it soon turned out a demanding and expensive decision, for Thore-Bürger had already sold the painting to the Belgian art dealer Léon Goucher. Thore-Bürger therefore suggested alternatives from his holdings, including a young woman standing at the Virginal, now in the National Gallery, London, and the concert, formerly Boston Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Symond declined, however, determined to secure The Girl with a Pearl Necklace, and set off for Brussels to view it. However, the purchase negotiations failed and the painting was offered at auction in April 1868, where it was acquired by the Paris art dealer Charles Sedlmayr. Allegedly, it was intended for the Städtisches Kunstinstitut in Frankfurt, a development Symond was less than pleased with. So he quickly set about acquiring the painting himself. Finally, Symond succeeded in acquiring the painting for the estimated price of 6,000 to 7,000 francs. This amount corresponded to the Sedlmayr's offer for the Frankfurt Museum. Only 6 years later, in 1874, the much beloved and admired work passed into the collection of the Berlin Gemäldegalerie. With the Symond collection, Berlin received a total of 5 paintings by Vermeer, of which only one, The Girl with the Pearl Necklace, was soon to be considered an authentic work by the artist. When looking at a painting in a museum, we usually assume to see precisely what the artist painted several centuries ago. However, as the research and restoration on the Dresden painting Girl Reading a Letter at an Open Window has just shown, the appearance of a work can change significantly over time. Already the artist himself may have changed his mind and modified the composition during the process of painting. Different periods and cultures had different opinions on how to treat artistic heritage and thus may have left their marks on the object. And finally, time itself has probably left its unavoidable traces. Although The Girl with a Pearl Necklace is in a comparably good condition, it is also possible to trace various changes made to this painting over the course of its existence. In 1985, the painting was examined with the help of the so-called neutron autoradiography, an extremely versatile and successful method for the non-destructive examination of paintings. With its help, design sketches, changes in composition or design variants contained in the hidden layers of the painting can be made visible. It provides information about the pigments used, the brushstroke, and the various stages of the work's genesis. In the case of the Berlin painting, the so-called fifth film of the neutron autoradiography in particular revealed corrections and changes Vermeer made to the composition during the painting process. For example, the chair in the foreground on the right originally contained a lute-like stringed instrument. On the wall behind the female figure, Vermeer first conceived the painting with a map, as one can actually find in a half a dozen of Vermeer's paintings hanging on the whitewashed wall. The autoradiography clearly shows that the map is applied in rough brushstrokes with bone black, but not definitely formulated. Vermeer obviously included the map on at first, but then changed his intention. Both the map and the stringed instrument were eventually removed again by Vermeer by painting them over. The extended white spot in the area of the drapery is also striking in the fifth autoradiography. It becomes clear that the fabric draped over the desk initially had smaller outlines, so that the tiled floor was visible in the bottom center. Today, only a small, barely traceable remnant of the white tiles can be seen in the painting anymore. The next alteration to the girl with the pearl necklace remains equally hidden to the common viewer, but is betrayed by an old label on the object's versa. The label reads, "Mon père, renturier des musées impériaux." Mon père was active in Paris and specialized in the relining of canvases. This label means a second canvas was attached to the back of the girl with the pearl necklace in order to provide greater support for the fragile artwork. At a certain point in time, no longer known today, but probably in connection with the relining just mentioned, the painting was expanded several centimeters to the upper edge. In the museum, this part of the painting is actually covered by the picture's frame, so visitors never get to see it. On the X-ray, as well as on the fifth neutron autoradiography and on the unframed original painting, this addition is easily recognizable. On the autoradiography, the upper edge has a clearly different structure of blackening than the rest. That means there's a different pigment composition compared to the rest of the image. The addition is particularly evident in the case of the upper edge on the map, which originally ended with the upper edge of the picture, as can also be seen in other Vermeer paintings. The upper end of the yellow curtain, which contrasts darkly with the rest of the curtain in the autoradiography, was painted with Naples yellow, a pigment that only became widely used from the 18th century onwards and is therefore likely to have been added later. In this context, the notes of Charles Eastlake, the director of the National Gallery in London, to whom Tori Burger presented the girl with a pearl necklace for sale in 1864, when the painting was in the possession of the French painter Henri Grévedon, are quite revealing. Grévedon acquired the picture from the Parisian art dealer and restorer Meffre, an accomplished picture dealer who would have left nothing undone to give the picture a better appearance, as Eastlake reported. Meffre, in turn, most probably knew and worked with the already mentioned reliner Mon père, who particularly was active around the middle of the 19th century. It can therefore be assumed that the girl with the pearl necklace was relined and restored around 1850, and in this context, the upper edge was most probably attached. By the way, Eastlake incidentally refused to buy the painting. Instead, the work passed into the possession of Tori Burger 2 years later. As a painting signed by the artist, the girl with the pearl necklace was of special interest to Tori Burger, who was largely responsible for the rediscovery of Vermeer's oeuvre in the 19th century. Thus, he made a loose sketch after the painting when it was in the Grevener possession. In it, he painstakingly recorded the signature as proof of authenticity. His sketch suggests that the signature, which today has almost disappeared amidst the dark colors of the desk, was much better legible at that time. Also, in the Berlin Museum's catalogue of 1883, which contains a facsimile of Vermeer's signature, the rendering is much more detailed than would actually be discernible today. So, what kind of representation are we dealing with here? What do we see in this picture? A young woman is standing at a table and gazing attentively into a mirror hanging on the wall opposite her. She is about to put on a pearl necklace, which she is holding on yellowish ribbons. Cool light enters from the left through a leaded window with a yellow curtain. On the table in front of her is a still life-like arrangement. By placing the vanishing point of the painting slightly above the tabletop, Vermeer skillfully achieved the monumentalization of figure and objects. By means of the overlapping chair visible at the front right, he achieved a convincing effect of depth and heightened the impression of intimacy. In the painting, the table also serves as a kind of threshold that cleverly separates the scene depicted from the space of the viewer. Thus, we are presented with a very intimate, private moment. The young woman is so absorbed that she does not seem to notice the presence of the viewer. At least, that is what Vermeer suggests here. Vermeer created here a composition characteristic of him, which is neither saccharine nor entertaining. By reducing the narrative elements of the painting to a minimum, he created the impression of calm and clarity that is so characteristic of the picture. The prominent whitewashed wall with its subtle gradations of color and carefully observed nuances of light also contributes to this restrained impression. Here, however, Vermeer did not only dispense with any form of explicit ornamental detail, he also adapted his painting technique accordingly. This is particularly evident in the execution of the fur trim on the yellow jacket or the powder puff lying on the table. While the so-called Leiden fine painters devoted themselves so much to such objects with almost unparalleled meticulousness, trying to capture every single hair, Vermeer was not concerned here with a detailed, accurate rendering. Rather, he succeeded in a convincing depiction of the fluffy fur or the soft bristles of the tassel by dispersing the colors, seemingly dissolving the contours and allowing them to blend into one another through barely perceptible tonal gradations. With the help of subtly placed color nuances, he created here a masterly, finely faceted coloring that is strikingly restrained. At first glance, Vermeer, like many of his fellow painters, seems to have depicted the theme of the morning toilet, which was very popular in the 1650s and 1660s. Indeed, painters such as Gerard Terborch and Franz Mears found comparably intimate solutions, which possibly also served Vermeer as inspiration for his painting. Vermeer's depiction, however, does not, as has long been assumed, contain the simple beauty and attractiveness of a young woman at the toilet, nor is the hidden meaning of a moral instruction revealed here primarily instanced as a warning against devotion to earthly luxury, vanitas, or too much arrogance, superbia. Rather, Vermeer achieved a shift in content through the reduction of action, object, and color. The representation loses its unambiguity. In contrast to the thematically related works of his contemporaries, the focus is not on instructive life wisdom, but on the central complexity of visual perceptual processes. In this context, the already mentioned corrections that Vermeer made during the painting process are very revealing. The overpainted objects of the map and the stringed instrument on the chair, as well as the enlarged drapery on the table, All these motives were removed from the painting or corrected by Vermeer for aesthetic and compositional reasons. Whereas before the picture was densely packed and restless because of the many objects depicted, the viewer's interest is now immediately directed toward the female figure whose gaze bridges the wall shaded in the finest values and draws the viewer's attention to the mirror on the left. All attention is now focused on the interplay between the figure of the young woman and her reflection, which is not visible to the viewer. The viewer's gaze follows her to the mirror opposite and is returned in a kind of circular movement across the drapery on the table to her bent fingers and her left hand to her face. A narrative temporality is abundant here. The concentration on the sensuality of the visual process dominates. This artistically ingenious move required a blank wall and a dark lower area that did not distract the eye. With this composition, Vermeer moved the empty wall into the center of the picture. The radical reduction of action, object, and coloring distinguishes the Berlin painting from thematically related works by contemporary artists and makes it a particular exceptional phenomenon. Thank you very much.